When you think of Home Depot, what comes to mind? Weekend trips for paint, lumber for a new deck, the classic DIY stuff.
This is aisle 7 for all your home improvement needs.
But lately, they've been spending billions, and I mean billions, on something totally different. A bet that's not just changing their business, it's shaking up an entire industry.
Because Home Depot isn't just thinking about you and me anymore. They're going all in on chasing the pro. And the prize is a jaw-dropping $450 billion market. They're going all in on the $450 million pro construction market, buying their way up the supply chain to become the ultimate one-stop shop for builders.
So when you think about Home Depot, what comes to mind? Probably weekend trips for paint, maybe some lumber for a new deck, right? The classic DIY stuff. But lately, they've been spending billions, and I mean billions of dollars on something totally different. They're making a massive bet. That's not just changing their own business, it's shaking up the entire construction industry. It all kicked off with headlines splashing this number around, $5.5 billion. Now that's a ton of money for sure, but honestly, it's just one piece of a much, much larger puzzle. It's actually part of this huge shopping spree that's turning their whole world upside down.
And that really brings us to the big question here, doesn't it? Why would Home Depot spend that much cash on a company that most of us, the regular shoppers, have probably never even heard of? The answer? Well, it reveals this huge strategic pivot away from just serving you and me.
To really get what's going on, you have to understand the prize they're after. See, Home Depot isn't just thinking about weekend warriors anymore. Nope, they are going all in on chasing the pro. Because the market for professional builders in the U.S. is worth a jaw-dropping $450 billion every single year. For a giant like Home Depot, where the old retail business is starting to slow down, grabbing even a little slice of that pie is a massive, massive opportunity.
So who exactly is this pro customer? Look, we're not talking about your local handyman who comes over to fix a leaky pipe. We're talking about the big leagues. Professional contractors, crews building entire housing developments, roofers working on massive commercial buildings. These are the people who buy materials by the truckload, need highly specialized stuff, and need it delivered right to the job site, like yesterday.
Okay, so how are they planning to win over this super lucrative market? Well, their strategy is a classic. It's right out of the mergers and acquisitions playbook. They want to become the one, single, indispensable place for every professional contractor, the ultimate one-stop shop.
And this plan rolled out with two gigantic moves. First, they dropped an incredible $18.25 billion on a company called SRS Distribution. This gave them a huge network for materials used on the outside of a building. Think roofing, landscaping, pools. Then, they turned around and used that new company, SRS, to buy another company called GMS for $5.5 billion. And GMS, they dominate the supplies for the inside of a building. Drywall, steel frames, you name it.
What we're seeing here is a classic business move called vertical integration. And all that really means is that Home Depot isn't just a retailer anymore. They're literally buying their way up the food chain. They're going from a company that just sells you stuff off a shelf to one that controls the massive distribution networks that get all those materials to the pros in the first place.
And this GMS deal, wow, it instantly gives them a whole new inventory of serious pro-grade stuff you never see in your local store. We're talking about literal tons of drywall, steel framing for huge buildings, specialized acoustical ceilings. I mean, this is the heavy-duty material that our towns and cities are actually built with.
And that, right there, that's the end game. The goal is to combine their regular stores, the SRS distribution muscle, and GMS's specialized inventory so that a pro contractor only needs to make one phone call for a project. Just one. From the moment they pour the concrete foundation to the second they pop in the last ceiling tile, Home Depot wants to be their guy.
But here's the thing. Home Depot's big shopping spree isn't happening in a bubble. It's actually part of a much bigger trend that's sweeping through the entire construction industry, and it's called consolidation.
You see this in a lot of industries when they start to mature. Mergers and acquisitions, M&A, just becomes the main way to grow. It turns into a game where the biggest fish, the biggest players, start swallowing up the smaller, more specialized companies to get bigger, control more of the market, and just lock down their power. And naturally, when one company starts making one huge acquisition after another, people start to notice, especially the government.
According to the FTC's own guidelines, a big trend toward consolidation is basically a red flag. It makes regulators perk up and start asking, is this just smart business, or is it creating a giant so powerful that it's actually bad for competition?
So, that's the high-level view, from Wall Street and Washington, D.C. But what does all this look like on the ground? For the employees and the industry insiders who actually have to make this whole thing work?
This quote from a sales pro on Reddit, it just nails a huge cultural problem they're facing. The world of pro building supplies isn't like selling lawnmowers. It's a business built on relationships, handshakes, what this person calls a good old boy network. That's a completely different universe from the corporate culture of a giant big box store.
And then you've got the view from inside Home Depot's own stores. This comment from an employee forum really shows the tension. Management is up there promising Wall Street massive growth from these deals. But on the store floor, employees are seeing things like payroll and staff get cut to meet those numbers. It's that classic squeeze between what shareholders expect and what's actually happening on Main Street. So when you put it all together, you've got the huge price tag, this massive strategic shift, the risk of government regulators stepping in, and these big cultural clashes. You start to realize this isn't just another business deal. This is a massive, high-stakes gamble.
And the two possible outcomes here are just incredibly far apart. On one hand, the payoff could be enormous. If this works, Home Depot becomes a totally dominant force that basically owns the professional market for decades to come. But on the other hand, the pitfalls are just as big. They could completely fail to merge these different company cultures, they could tick off their original DIY customers, or they could get dragged into a huge, messy antitrust battle with the government.
So, yeah, Home Depot is betting billions to build a brand new empire. One that's not for the weekend DIYer, but for the American professional. The big question we're left with is this: are they building an unbeatable industry giant, or are they just creating a target that has become too big for regulators to possibly ignore?
Narrator, voiceover. Are they building an unbeatable empire, or are they setting themselves up to become too big to survive? Their strategy? Become the one-stop shop for everything a pro builder needs. But this massive shopping spree is creating a giant, and giants attract attention from Wall Street and from Washington.